For this final part of the Hogwarts challenge, I'm going to make like a little to-do list here of things that I wish to do. One of them is going to be to modify the seed script to create fake appointments. So now that we have a slash appointments area, I would like it to be populated with a little bit more realistic data. I would also like there to be like a header menu that will link to things like it'll have like a home and it'll go to appointments, and eventually we're going to be adding this idea of semi-static pages, so it might point to some pages, so a header menu. Coming before that will be the actually creation of the pages. I'm going to just accelerate that process and lean on scaffolding a little bit. So I'm going to scaffold a page MVC-R bundle, and then we're going to add some auth to it so that only authenticated users can edit and create pages and delete them. And then we will also add a concept of sort of like pretty permalinks to those pages so that we could link to a page by instead of going like /pages/12, it might be nicer to go to something like /static/about us or /static/FAQ, that kind of idea for a little bit more human-friendly URLs. And the last thing is we had added a teacher model, and we've seen teachers by way of appointments. Right? We see teacher names here. They're currently not being linked to, and they're not being linked to because we don't yet have a teacher's controller. So right now, when we go to a school, we list just the students. It would be nice to also list the teachers and be able to link to those, and then that sort of would cover our entire application. We'd have a way to navigate through to everything. And so the idea there would be to add a teacher's controller, and then for that one, we're only going to have a show action and view, so that just like individual teachers have a page, and then link to teachers show pages where it is necessary. So those are the things that we want to accomplish today. I'm going to do some of these things, and some of them I'm going to leave, just give some time for you to do a little bit of work. That'll be mainly around the teacher controller stuff because it's very similar to how we set up the student controller. I just want to make sure, like often it's some of the things in Rails look fairly straightforward when you see someone demo them, but then when you go to do them yourselves, you can run into issues or edge cases. So I'm going to have you implement the teacher's controller somewhere sort of midway in this process. But we might as well start by looking at the seed script and creating some fake appointments. So the seed script lives in the DB folder. There it is. Already in here, we are creating a certain number of houses and then students for each one of those houses. We can also now create and destroy appointments and teachers. So I guess the order in which these things are destroyed at the top of the script matters. I'm going to start by going to the appointment model and destroying all. If I tried to destroy either students or teachers before appointments, then there'd be like orphan foreign keys, and so don't want that. And then we can delete teachers after that, and houses last because teachers and students reference houses, so we can't delete the houses until we've deleted the teachers and the students. So that's a good order for that process. I should just run this to see if that works. So I can do a Rails DB seed. That'll tell me how many students and houses were generated, and if we went back over here to appointments, there should be none. There's probably an argument to be made here. If there are no appointments, maybe say that, right? Rather than like right now, there's just going to be like an empty UL sitting inside of the page source. So maybe we quickly fix that up. So if I hit Control P, I want to get to the appointment show action. So I can say app show. Oh no, where is it? Appointment. Oh, it's the index action. Yeah. And so maybe just a little if statement here. So like if appointments dot size, or even if appointments empty, there are no appointments. Else, all of this stuff gets bumped out, and then end. So this is our else block. This is our associated if block. Let me just check to see if this is working, and then I'll come back to it. There are no appointments. That's good. So a quick little if-else statement in there. And again, that's the index.html file that's in the appointments subfolder of the views folder. While I'm in here, I might as well make it so that the student gets linked to. Check that out. Oops. Oh, well, I'm not going to be able to see it until we have any students. So I added this. So the first argument of link to is what the link will display, which is the student name, and then what the link will actually link to is the student associated with that particular appointment. Okay, so that means that was a bit of an aside. I just realized that we had no way of denoting that there were 0 appointments. So we can now go back to the seed script, generate some teachers, and then pull some random teachers and some random students and make appointments for them just so that we have some seed data there. So I will first add in this index, and I will say if else or when there are no appointments. And then the seed script, I'll wait to add to it. Teachers belong to houses, so I can do the same thing I did here with the students, in that inside of this block where I'm creating houses, I can also create teachers associated with these houses. And I could also make this a little bit more dynamic in terms of how many teachers and how many houses there are. So I could have like a number of students, sorry, number of students dynamic and number of teachers dynamic. So for this, I'll go to Ruby's random function. I'm not going to use the faker random function because it spits out a string, and so I would have to then convert it to a number. So I might as well just go to Ruby's rand, which takes the range. So I can say there's going to be anywhere from like 10 to 15 students in a house, and then the number of teachers, I'll make it somewhere between 3 and 6. I'll change this hard-coded 12 here to my number of students, and then really I can sort of copy and paste these 5 lines here, then modify them for number of teachers. And now I'm going to houses dot teachers, and that's still the faker unique character name, and save. And then I want to know how many teachers and teachers. And I should be able to run this script now to see it in action. House.teachers. You don't like that, or did I typo teachers up here? No. Line 32. Oh, that's the typo. So it actually worked, did all the things, and then died on the very last line. There we are, 8 houses, 106 students, and 36 teachers. It's good there's lots of data in the Harry Potter character collection because we're asking for unique, so obviously there's at least 152 characters in there. And now we can create appointments. There's a few different ways we could do this. Trying to think of, because we really just want associations between random ones. So I can say, like, say we want to create some random number of appointments, some number between, I don't know, 10 and 20 appointments. So that'll do that. And then inside of here, I'm going to get a reference to a teacher. And a reference to a student. And then sample just gets a random element from a collection. Not the most efficient way to get a random entry out of our database because we're pulling all rows and then picking one at random, but it'll work for now. And then we can go to appointment dot create, and an appointment needs a teacher, that'll be T, and a student, that'll be S, oh, that'll be :S. And then we also need a particular time at which this appointment was scheduled. And I think I called the column scheduled. Is that what I called it? Okay, so scheduled. And then here, this is going to be scheduled. Faker can generate date times for me. So I'm going to need to look that up because I always forget how Faker works in terms of a lot of things. Faker gem. It's part of the default generators. It is like the date or time generators. Faker time forward. That seems to be okay. That'll work. I'll copy and paste this one into place. The appointment's going to be, somewhere between 5 to 30 days in the future. All the appointments happen in the morning, and then I can say scheduled is scheduled. And then again, we want to appointments. All right, I'll leave that up on the screen while I try running the seed script. And it looks like we generated 14 appointments. So I will come back to my code, but I'll quickly just go over here, and currently there are no appointments. If I reload the page, 14 of them, and all the students are, you can follow their links. The teachers, currently not so much. And so there was the code that went into that. There's a whole bunch of different ways we could have done this. Like, again, in the scope of our project, our database isn't big, so it's not a big deal to gather all the teachers and then sample from that. But if you were working with a really big data set, that would be incredibly inefficient. You can do things like you can order by random and then limit 1. I think that might be a way to also get a random teacher. Let me see if that is a thing. Nope, that's giving me back like a collection. Reload that. That looks okay. I could probably even then get rid of the limit 1, couldn't I? Just give me the first when they're ordered randomly. Yeah. So if the database can do the work for you, make the database do the work for you. Like, anything you do in code will always be way slower than what the database can do, because the database is tuned to work with data, right? The code, like grabbing all the records and doing something manual with them in code, is going to be always slower, or in most cases slower than working with the database. The only problem, the only downside to me dropping in that random like that is that this is the SQL random function, and the SQL random function is not ANSI SQL, meaning it's not supported across all SQL databases. So it works in SQLite. It'll probably work in most other databases, but I remember that there is one database, I can't remember if it was MySQL or SQL Server, that uses like rand instead of random. And so when you put something into your active record that isn't ANSI SQL, you're sort of destroying the database agnostic factor, right? Normally, active record is database agnostic, meaning it doesn't care what database is in the back end. It's agnostic to the type of database you selected. But once you've put in something that's not ANSI SQL, you've made it sort of, now there's something that cares, right? This will only work on SQL databases that support the random function. And that's all I think that I want to add to my seed script. That gives me enough sort of interesting data to work with in this site. So I can check that into source control now. Generating teachers and appointments. Check. Next up, we've got pages. We're going to implement some pages, and I said we're going to just sort of do a little bit of leaning on scaffolding for this, because really what I want to show you is more this idea of permalinks. So a little bit of working with the routing system when you want to step outside of what RESTful routes have to offer. So I'm going to go to the console. I'm going to Rails generate a scaffold. Scaffold for what? scaffold for a page. And what is a page? Well, the page has a title, which is a string, some content, which is text, and then we're also going to have a permalink, which is a string. And the permalink is going to give us the ability to build URLs that look something like this, or at least the path port of our URL, where we're going to want to be able to go to something like /static/about-us or /static/FAQ instead of going to /pages/34 and /pages/1. So it just makes it a little bit more human readable. If you're putting that URL in an email or on a poster or in some context where a human is going to read it, this is a much more readable portion of a URL than this. The added benefit to that is if you have a page that has a lot of this kind of semi-static content and you have fairly descriptive page titles, Google and other search engines even look for keywords in the URL paths, and it's sort of unknown whether that adds to your Google ranking or not, but it can't hurt. So I'm going to press enter here on my page scaffold. And then a Rails DB migrate to get the pages table. Over in source control, added a scaffold for a page. If I now go to /pages, I can create new pages, like something called About Us. This is the content of the About Us page. In many cases, I generate this permalink. So here I'm just going to have the user type the permalink in, but this permalink is going to be part of a URL. That means it has to conform to like the allowable characters for URLs. So like spaces probably shouldn't be used. If you put a space into a browser, it turns it into %20. Still makes it to the server, but again, it doesn't look so nice as a URL anymore. So instead of spaces, we often use like underscores or dashes. And so often what I'll do is like inside the application, I'll take something like the title and I'll like URL-alize it. So like convert all of the, the non-URL characters into URL-friendly characters. But for the sake of this example, we'll just say that we trust our users to put in something that works within the context of a URL. There's even a Rails gem that I've used called Friendly ID that does a lot of this for you. And so it allows you to build friendly URLs in a very standardized way. So that's sort of a nice thing as well. So here we're using About Us in this one. I will create that page. I'm going to make another page called Frequently Asked Questions. Here are some questions we get all the time and some answers. FAQ. So there's another page in the system. At this point, were we to deploy this website, we would not necessarily want to deploy it in a way where anyone could just go to /pages and create pages and edit them and delete them. So we're going to want to put some protection in place there. We also are going to want to change the show view to look a little bit more like we might want our pages to look. So I'll start with that. I'll go to the show view and make it look a little bit more like a static page. So we're going to find that in the app views pages folder under show.html.erb, going to make it so that the title is inside of an H1 rather than a paragraph, and that the content doesn't have the word content, it's just inside of the paragraph, and the permalink can go away. So just sort of simplifying that page a little bit to something that looks like this now, or in the case of the second page, this. So there's the simplification. And then to add a little bit of basic authentication, I'm going to go into the associated controller. And you've seen me do this once before when I gave my very first initial demo of Rails, but we'll go over it again. And again, I'm going to be skipping some steps here. I'm going to hard code a username and password into the controller. Typically, you would want to save that in the database and retrieve that. So we're going to go into the app controllers folder, and I want the pages controller. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the guides, because it's in the end of the getting started guide where they go over some basic authentication. And so I'm going to just grab this line. And so what the line says is http://basic_authenticate_with, and then you give it a name and a password. And so it can be full stack secrets. Too many secrets. And instead of saying only destroy, I'm currently just going to have it on everything. I'm going to eventually put an except statement in there saying like ask for a password everywhere except, but I don't have that exception in place yet. So I have an HTTP basic authenticate with where the name is full stack and the password is too many secrets. Oh yeah, not there, over here. Ask me for a password. If I put in the wrong thing, it just keeps asking. If I put in the right thing, full stack and too many secrets, then it works. So that's a little bit of auth. Now I need permalinks. And for that, I'm going to go to the routing file and add a brand new route. I'm also going to add a new action to route to. So I can add that action right now. Call it permalink. The name doesn't really matter, but it describes what it's doing. And what I'd like to be able to do here is I'd like to be able to find a page by going to the page model and finding not by some ID, but by a permalink. So I'm going to say like find by permalink, and then I'm going to go to the params hash and make the assumption that this permalink is going to be in the params hash like a placeholder, similar to how we have passed in IDs in other cases. So permalink. That's an assumption that currently won't work, right? Because I haven't built the route up yet. But what I'd like the route to look like is I would like there to be a GET request to something like /static, and then the placeholder permalink. And so this placeholder is the same word here. That's the That's the real key, is that the routing system will put whatever's here into the params hash and put it at position permalink. So I have to go make this route now inside of the routing system. So I'll go open up the routing system. That's in the config folder right here. And I will just make it a manual route. I'll say a get request to slash static slash permalink should go to the pages controller's permalink action. And then I'm going to use the as option to give this route a name. So when we used link to in the past, we said things like link to the route underscore path. And that was like a named route. So to name this route, I give it a name by way of as, and I would just call it permalink. So we can now, with our link to command, we can link to the permalink underscore path for a particular page. All of that works, but we don't yet have a view template associated. But we can at least see if the route triggers and it tries to run this and then throws like a template error. So if we go to a slash static slash something, it should go here and then throw a template error for us. So if I go to like slash static slash FAQ, I know that's a real route or a real page that exists. And it tells me that we're missing a template. But I know that my route's working, at least. The thing is we already have a view that does what we want, right? The show view does what we want already. And so I can just say render show. And so the default behavior for all actions is to automatically load up the associated view, the view that's named after the action that's in a folder named after the controller. Well, we can circumvent that by just saying, well, just render a different one. I want you to render the show view. And that's going to render the app views pages show.html.erb. I go back over here. We now have a nice little static route. There's a problem though, which is that like if someone puts something that doesn't exist or they like typo by accident, things blow up. And that's because find by permalink does not throw an exception if the thing isn't found. Find throws an exception if it doesn't find by ID. But find by one of these kind of magic finders where it finds by some column, it doesn't throw an exception. So I have to do a little bit of a test here. I can say something like, you know, if you found a page, so if the page is truthy, then render out the, that was weird. If the page is truthy, render it out in using the show action. Otherwise, redirect to, and I'll just go to a known valid location. I'll go to the root path. I'll put a space here. Let's check to see if this this works. Yeah, so anytime I go to a static route that doesn't exist, it just redirects me back home. If I go to a static route that does exist, I could also manually throw the same kind of record not found exception to trigger Rails' 404 system to kick into place too. So that's another option if I wanted to show a 404. Showing a 404 would probably be like the webby way to do things. the correct webby way to do things. But I wanted to show these two methods, the two ways of circumventing the automatic loading of a view at the end of an action. So if we don't have render or redirect in any of our actions, the default is that we just always auto-magically load up the associated view by going into the subfolder named after the controller and finding a view named after the action. But we can circumvent that with either render by using another view or redirect. And underneath the hood, redirect is using HTTP codes to do that redirection. So it'll probably send our browser like a 302, which is like the resource moved error code for HTTP. Okay. Done. A header menu. Okay, so let's save these things up. Implemented the permalink action route. When you want a menu in a Rails system, you usually want it at the top of all of your pages or maybe at the bottom of all your pages, but you want it on all of your pages. And anything that you want on all of your pages goes in the layout. So if you go to the views folder, there's a layouts folder. And the default layout is the application.html.erb. This is what gets loaded up on every page, and right where you see this yield keyword, that is where every one of your views is displayed. And so if I wanted to, I could put up here, I could put like a header, and inside of that header I could have like a nav. And I usually implement my navs as unordered lists, and then I style them up later. If you were using something like Bootstrap here, you would go to Bootstrap and you would like copy and paste the HTML that is sort of, you know, the Bootstrap way of making a nav, and you'd copy that into place, and then you'd put your link tos inside of there. And inside of this li here, I'm going to echo out with an ERB echo a link to something. We'll link to a few things here. We're going to link to home, and that's just the root path. But we could also link to, for example, the about page. And this is where we can make use of the name of our permalink route. So we named our permalink route permalink, meaning that it is a named route. In order to see that, to know that that's actually a thing, I could go to my application and I could go to /rails/info, and I could see that we have such a thing called a permalink path. And so that's from the named route. And you can see that if I called the route something else, like WAT, and save that, it's now the WAT path, right? So it doesn't matter what it's called, it's just that you have to name it something and then you have to use it by name later on. Probably better to call it the permalink. And so here I can say permalink path. And then what is the permalink? Well, it's about us. And same thing goes for like the FAQ page. For that, I also am going to go to the permalink path, and the permalink is FAQ. So in this case, with the permalink path helper, it needs a little bit more information to build the link, right? Because the route includes a placeholder. So in order for link2 to actually build the correct route, it needs to know what this permalink is. So when you use the permalink path, you have to supply a permalink. And again, this word, that a word that appears right here, has to match this word that you put right here. So if I go check this app out over here, reload the page. Not the most beautiful menu, unstyled, but there it is. Should be able to go home, should be able to go to the About page, should be able to go to the FAQ page. And here's the associated code that made that happen. This bothers me a little bit. Only a little bit, but it bothers me. And the reason it bothers me is that now, like, baked into one of my views is an assumption about data that exists in my database. So if there was not a page with a permalink of About Us, this would not be a valid link. And so, again, that would probably be, a reason to make maybe even a variant of this seed script or a path in this seed script for like what to generate in production data, right? So the seed script's not just for generating data in development mode. You can test which mode you're in inside of here, and then you could generate some production data. And even if it's just a placeholder, so you could have something like page.create with a title of About Us, and the content is please fill this in, and the permalink is About Us. That would guarantee that there is something in our database with this particular permalink. So that's the one thing that I would say would be a caveat to like having this hard coded in here, just making sure that when you seed into your database, you're generating the things that you assume exists in the views. Frequently asked questions, and that needs a permalink of FAQ. Like that. Okay. Save that up. Go in here. Basic menu in the layout. Generating required pages in the seed script. And that gets us to the end of here, but not quite. Forgot one tiny thing. Michael also has a question. What is it, sir?
So if there's multiple permalinks that have the same string.
For the permalink. Yeah, let's go fix that up so that there can't be. So the comment there was like, what if someone accidentally put in like 2 About Us pages with the same permalink? That sounds like a job for validation, right? So on our page, we can have like validates that the title and the permalink have a presence of true. That seems like a decent thing. But also that validates that permalink has a uniqueness of true. Thanks, that's a good addition, right? Because you definitely, what would happen if you didn't have that in place and someone accidentally created another similar or same named permalink is that in here, I'm pretty sure find by permalink finds the first one. So you'd get a really confused user, like someone that's trying to add a page and be like, well, it never shows up. This other page shows up. And so it wouldn't cause an error, but it definitely wouldn't be what we want in our system. That's right. So right now we would also have to make sure, thank you, that we go up here and do a destroy all. Otherwise that validation is now going to fail when it goes to try to create those pages because they already do exist. So we'll destroy those on the running of our seed script. And we should even just try to see if that, oh no, I don't want to do a DB migrate. I want to do a DB seed. DB seed. And if I go back to my application, it will no longer say, here are some questions. It'll just say, like, please fill in. And the About page says something similar. The only thing that I have left now, and we'll only see it if I go and change the password, is that I have basic authentication on everything, including the permalinks, that's not what we want, right? We don't want just regular users to be asked for a password. So we can see that if I change the password here and I try to load up a permalink, it's asking for a username and password. That's the one place where we don't want a username and password to be asked for. And so all we need to do here is add accept permalink. So this is like long enough that I might do something like this. So that will mean that Rails is going to ask for a password on every other action, but not on this permalink one, which is what we want. And so if I go back over here, About Us should load, but if I try to edit it, I'm asked for a password. If I try to go to /pages, I'm asked for a password. But if I go to the static FAQ, it's all good. And so back over in the Get world here, what have we done? Well, we did the exception, we did the validations, and we did the seed script stuff. Page model validations and password permalink password exception. And we've now arrived at a place where we're going to generate a whole new controller for a teacher. And a teacher is going to have a show action that will displays we want to have a show action. It should display the teacher's name, their house, and the number of appointments they have. And so this is the part that I want you to spend a little bit of time on. I want to see if you can generate a new teacher controller or teacher's controller. That controller should have a show action and a show view. It should be routed to with a RESTful show route using the resources helper inside of the routing file. As I said here, the view should display the teacher's name, their house, and the number of appointments they have. And you should add links to the teacher's show page I know. First, add a list of teachers to the house show view and link to the teacher show action for all those links. Those are your tasks, should you choose to accept them. And so I'm going to pause the video right now. Feel free to take a little bit of a break before you start implementing these things. And then we'll come back to the video. I'll also implement these things, and then we'll come back to the video and just look over how I implemented them. You won't have to watch me implement them. I'll have implemented them already. And this is how I implemented those various things. The controller was generated with simply a Rails G controller teachers, and I asked for a show action, and so a show action and an associated view was created for me. So here's the controller. I've already got the show action filled out here, so an @teacher variable is being created and assigned teacher find, pulling in from the params hash at position ID. And that means that we're going to have a RESTful route that responds to a GET request to /teachers/SumID, and it's that ID that's going to end up in the params hash at position ID. If I look at the routing file in the config folder, I removed the route that was added up at the top of the page by the generator, and I now have asked to create, by way of resources, a route for teachers, but only the show route. And I have in a comment here sort of the equivalent manually created route. The view that goes along with that is going to make use of this @teacher variable. And so here's what that view looks like. Pages, teachers, there it is, show. It uses the @teacher variable to display the teacher's name up at the top. And then inside of a paragraph tag, it says teacher name belongs to house, and then it links to the teacher's house and uses the name of the house. And they have, and here I'm using the pluralize helper because sometimes they'll have plural appointments, sometimes they'll have singular appointments. So I'm saying use the teacher's appointment size and either pluralize or not the word appointment. And so that is what's going to happen if I go over here and I go to one of the teacher pages. There we see that teacher has 3 appointments, plural, and we might be able to find a teacher. Oh, Voldemort has multiple appointments, who has 0. There, 0 appointments, and if we had 1, it would be 1 appointment, singular. Let's see, what did I have to do next after that? So that covers off most of this. Oh yeah, also adding a list of teachers to the house show view. So that is the house show. I put a header above the list of students that said students, and then down below a header that says teachers. and then I'm just inside of an unordered list, looping through the housed teachers, and then for each one calling that teacher and linking the teacher name for the link text and the teacher for the target. And so that gives us this page here. So when we're looking at a particular house, we see the students and the teachers associated with the house, and the teachers are links. And that's for every single one of the houses that we have now, like so. And I added those links already. I also added those links to the appointments page, and I added the appointments page to our menu up here. So now it's home, appointments, about, and FAQ. So if I click appointments, it takes me to the appointments index, and there, for the teachers that are mentioned, I also added a link to. And so that was done in the layout file, and for one part of that, adding the link to the appointments, which is a link to the appointments path. And then inside of that appointments view, making the teacher a link. So there's the link text is the name, and then the link target is the appointment teacher. And so those again are the various steps that are involved in building out a piece of a Rails application. If we were to go to our Rails overview, once again, sort of reminding ourselves that this is the model that we're now following, not just the active record model, but the mental model for how a Rails website works. And we've now seen various examples of this sort of flow where we're defining a route which maps to a controller action that queries model from the database, or queries the model for data from the database, handing that off to the view by way of instance variables, potentially including ERB to sort of have conditionals or loops within there, and then having that view be injected into a layout and served back to the end user. The other reminder is that these Rails overview notes contain a lot of intro Rails stuff, including stuff that can be helpful for your project, right? So they go over like the link to helper. They go over stuff that we haven't yet covered in class, like partials. Those are Rails versions of components. We'll get to those after midterms. You don't necessarily need to use those for your project. If you want to, you can look them up here or in the Rails view helper guide. Images. There is an image tag that if you pass it the name of an image and that image is in the app assets images folder, it'll just automatically make the image tag for you. And that's helpful because of the asset pipeline. So any image that you put into the app assets images folder, you can't just manually make a image tag that like routes to that thing. You have to rely on the image tag helper to make the proper source attribute for you. So that's something to consider because one of the sort of very simple ways of adding images to a model is just to add a string field to a model that could be like the URL of an image. That's what I did for my Board Game Geek website, so those images that I'm sort of hot linking to, and then I'm just passing that URL to image tag, and it's properly pathing to me. So if you pass it just the name of a file, it goes and looks in the app asset images folder. If you pass it a full URL, then it builds a image tag to that URL. There's other information here, including implementing a keyword search. So if you want to implement a keyword search, that's one of the features of the project. That's in here as well. And at the very bottom, there's also some information just generally on like debugging with Rails, how to read a Rails error message, how to debug with the web console, or even there is the debug keyword that you can use inside of your views if you have a object that has a bunch of data inside of it and you're curious, like it's not working the way you think it should be working and you want to see what's in that data, inside of a view you could echo out debug and then any object and it'll print out the content of it. It's similar to what we used in PHP for doing the same thing, which was printr. And then also sometimes it's handy to use logging. And so you can use logger.debug and that'll spit out logging information to your db log development.log file and also just to the Puma instance that's running inside of VS Code. So if you go to like your server, the log stuff appears there. So if you're having issues tracking down bugs, sometimes it could be handy to drop in a few logging statements and sort of see sort of where you're reaching in the code before things blow up, or the contents of different variables at different points. And so that logger.debug can be handy. And that's, yeah, I think that's all I got to say about that. This was our final lecture before midterms. So next week is all work periods and or marking periods. And